Hello, my name is Roman Didihashvili, and this is the lecture with analyzing members' games. Well, let me tell you something. When I analyze members' games, for me it's a real challenge. Challenge in what way? It's more of a challenge than analyzing World Championship games, because in World Championship games you see that every move is a logical, and you know the plan that one or the other player are playing with, and it makes a lot of sense to follow this game. And also, but as far as the tactics go, tactics normally between two strong players, you don't see too much tactics happening on the board. Maybe in calculations and behind the scene, but not actually on the board. But the challenge of mediocre players that once the games were analyzed is more challenging because, first of all, you are not presented very frequently with the best move. The best moves are not played at the board. And also you see some moves that you have to find out what is the plan, what is the idea of this move. And it's not easy every time. And guessing the plan, well, a lot of times I see the move, I say, okay, this is the plan, that's what he's playing for. And all of a sudden, he switches, goes to the other side, and he has different plan. So plans change all the time. That's why it's a challenge for me. On the other hand, for you guys, analyzing those games are very instructive. When someone shows you mistakes and you see what kind of mistakes you make, you want to make sure you don't make them and go on with the best plans and with very very good logical game that you can play. So now let's look at the game. Finally, we have game between two players played not online, but in Ashland, in South Carolina tournament. And Ashland is I believe it's Land of the Sky tournament, and it's a beautiful place where this tournament played every year. And we don't even have real names of the players. Of all we know that with white it's played SD, and with the black EK. Okay, means nothing to me, but game is here, and it's important to have moves of the game rather than the names. So let's go on. Very instructive game. D4, knight F6, C4, C5, D5, B5. Game that was played by white, E3. I will never recommend anyone to play this move. That's a bad move. Well, normally when somebody plays Bengal Gambit, either you accept it, the gambit, or you don't accept it. But if you don't accept it, you don't go E3. You may go knight F3, and on BC to play knight C3 and then E4, followed by E4, for example, D6, E4. But E3 is very passive move. And what happened in the game, bishop B7, trying to put pressure on D5. And on bishop b7, knight f3, and now g6. Well, when I said that I have difficulties to understand ideas behind the moves, why bishop b7 if you are intending to play g6? Bishop b7, I understand if you want to go e6 and put maximum pressure on the d5 pawn. But if you are not going to do it, and on knight f3 play g6, why are you putting bishop on a blocked diagonal? g6, bishop e2, knight a6. It's very difficult for me to realize, to absorb those moves. Well, you go bishop b7, seems like you want to put pressure on d5, then you go g6 to develop dark square bishop. And then you are not developing that bishop either, you're going knight a6. This is bizarre sequence of moves that, well, of course it doesn't do immediate damage, but it's not something you want to play especially in the opening. Now, after knight a6, b3 was played. I like this move. b3, bishop goes to b2, c4 square being secured, and knight on a6 and bishop on b7 are very pitifully placed. After b3, bishop g7, bishop b2, black castles, white plays knight d2, knight c7, e4, and d6. Well, here we see black's three moves that absolutely unjustified and total loss of the time. That's why before you do that, make sure you achieve results. You played bishop c8 to b7 and knight from b8 to a6 and to c7. Now on c7, knight on c7 stands very inferior to d7 position, where he could get in one move. Instead, black makes two moves and puts knight on inferior position on c7. Those are the mistakes that are very easy to avoid. You should never do that. Make sure you have plan, you stick with this plan. So you go to put pressure on d5, then you abandon this idea, then you go knight a6, knight c7, you bring knight on c7 where it cannot go anywhere. So those are bad moves. As a result, white played badly the opening and they have an advantage, clear advantage. Now, castle was played by white, rook e8, intending e6 to get some life in the position. Queen c2, a6. Well, actually, on the last move, this pawn on b5 could have and should have been taken. But it's not a really big mistake not to take it. Queen c2, a6, rook f e1. You see, these pieces on c7 and b7 are terribly placed. e6, bishop d3, and another inconsistency. Now black plays e5. And this is the position. Some people may think it's a harmless position. So white plays knight f1, which is a turning point in the game. Knight f1, in my opinion, is absolutely horrible mistake. Well, it doesn't do any damage. It doesn't weaken any squares. But why should I say that this is a horrible mistake? This is a horrible mistake because it's the beginning of very bad plan. Why knight is going to f1? Normally they go knight f1 to go knight g3 and to start create some play on the queen side. Queen side is absolutely not the area of the board white should be playing for. Everybody knows in closed positions in King's Indian, it's absolutely known for anyone who played chess for more than a few months that when position is closed, white supposed to play on the queen side where they have big space advantage. And the reason why I call knight f1 is a terrible mistake, that means it shows that white is on the wrong track. They have absolutely no intention to do anything on the queen side. The only correct move here would have been a3. a3 is good for several reasons. White must play on the queen side. White wants to open position on queen side by playing b4 next move. At the same time, for example, on knight f1, black could and should have played b4 and locking out the queen side. And after this, after b4 move, white is going to have very hard time to create constructive plan. So knight f1 is terrible mistake. After a3, white has big advantage. They're going to go b4, and all their pieces are well placed for launching very strong attack on the queen side and pressure, and b4 next move. This is the only correct plan, only correct way, and that's why I call knight f1 a terrible mistake, because white has no intention of playing on queen side. Now knight h5 was played and bishop c1. White has absolutely no plan. Knight f4, and here white is taking on f4, giving up the dark square bishop. Dark square bishop, now black takes back and opens, they get very strong dark square bishop on g7, and white plays rook a to b1. They kept the terrible bishop, they opened the bad bishop, and they exchanged the good bishop. And here we can see once more the pitiful position of knight on c7. You know, if knight was on d7, you could see how it can help black with dominating on dark squares and put the knight on e5 and continue with a play on the king side. Now, after rook a to b1, g5 was played by black. I don't like g5 move because it allows e5, and e5 was played. Black should somehow, with limited resources, they have to try to blockade center and then play queen f6. if knight takes e5, even d takes e, no, d takes e is not good, but rook takes e5, followed by queen f6, could have been okay, although white can get the counterplay with b4. But that would have been the better choice. After g5, white played e5, and now what happens is that this game is unique in a way that white made some terrible positional errors, and so did black. And neither one of the sides got punished for what they did. Now, after e5, h6 was played. h7 pawn hangs, h6 was played. White went e6. e6 is, well, it's not the move that should have been played. The correct move was e takes d, queen takes d6, and knight f1 to d2, trying to play knight e4. g4 is not good because after knight h4, there is another great outpost for white's knight, for knight f5. And here we see absolutely pitiful position of knight on c7. So instead of making, well, I maybe annoy you by repeating the same thing. Instead of making one move and develop knight to d7, black decided to give up a tempo to put knight on a terrible position. And knight on c7 is terrible. And after knight d2, well, I don't know. The next move is knight e4. And black's position is, well, the least to say is very bad. C5 pawn is critically weak. Knight comes to e4, dominating position, and black is probably lost. e6 was played. F takes e. Now bishop g6, rook e7, and bishop h5. Now, those moves, well, I don't even understand bishop g6 and bishop h5 because it gives up more material, and rook takes e7, queen takes e7, rook e1, queen f6, and after cd, black played bishop c8 to put the bishop on f5. Well, actually, also now you see the d5 pawn is weak. Knight is going to come to d5, and black may say they played knight a6 and knight c7, and then eventually they took on d5 white's pawn, and the plan, the strategy they had was successful. Strategy was not turned out to be successful, but white takes a lot more credit for it than black does for a bad play. After bishop c8, there was played queen d2, and intention of bishop c8 was also g4 move. Knight is trapped. White is absolutely lost. They played knight h4, blundering the knight, and that ended the game. Well, to explain it to you, I don't know how to explain it better. Bad plan was not punished. It started all with, well, just to recap, knight a6, knight c7 plan, and having bishop on b7 And that was a bad idea. After center was closed, white did not proceed with the correct plan with a counterplay on the queen side, and they started making moves, one move at a time, and each one of them was with no plan at all. And black gave them the plan. Black gave them, black forced them to play e5 practically, and white got winning position. And then totally unexplained maneuver, bishop g6 and bishop h5, threw everything away. And so there was number of mistakes. And if you go through this game, through this lecture very carefully, I am guaranteeing you that this is the types of positions are very, very easy to play. If you have absolute logic, make absolute logical moves. Now, on a higher level, you will never see this game. On a high level, you can see a lot of terrible blunders, one move blunders where you hang a rook, you hang a queen. I've done it myself. You blunder mate or something. But you will never see that one side makes move after move after move without concrete plans. And the game looks like bunch of unrelated moves. It's like this. Well, for example, for me, it's very difficult to reconstruct this game by memory, because when somebody tells you to give bunch of numbers like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, it's all odd numbers. It's easy to remember. But when they say 27, 36, 2, it's like a numbers from lotto. It's very difficult to remember because there is no logical sequence there. That's exactly the way this game was. I had big problems remembering this game. So when I was going move by move, I had to go with the score sheet. So remember, when you play the game, you remember to have well constructed plan and you follow it religiously. Unless there is a good reason, then you may derail for it. We didn't see any good reason for either one of the sides to derail from correct plan, and this was very important game to learn from. Thank you very much.